Israel. We last left off 613 Commandments, Part 1, with Exodus 21, 18, and 19, regarding restitution. If you were to fight a person, and that person somehow gets hurt to the point where they have to be on bed rest or away from work, then you must pay for them days that he missed out of work. It's plain and simple. It's the restitution. And again, that's referring to Exodus 21, verses 20 and 21. Let's go back over that real quick. And if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall surely be punished. No, I'm sorry. It's 18 and 19. And if men strive together and one smite another with a stone, or with his fist, and he die not, but keepeth his bed, if he rise again and walk abroad upon his staff, then shall he that smote him be quit. Onely he shall pay for the loss of his time, and shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. Now next after that is Exodus 21, 20 and 21. And if a man smite his servant or maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall surely be punished. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is money. So basically, if he dies, then you shall be punished. If you beat your slave or your maid with a rod and they die, then you shall be punished. But if they're just simply hurt, then you don't have to pay restitution, because that person is money. Their work is money to you. So you lost out, not them. So you don't have to worry about that. Next is Exodus 21, 22. If men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that after her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow, he shall surely be punished according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. So if a person hurts a woman with child, and she aborts that child because of that, he shall be punished. Plain and simple. We move on to Exodus 21, 28. If an ox gore a man or a woman that they die, then the ox shall surely be stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be quit. Now, it's pretty much if an ox, or it just could go to your dog, hurts a person and that person dies, then that animal should be killed and it should not be eaten. Next is Exodus 22, 1 through 3. If a man shall steal an ox or a sheep and kill it and sell it, he shall restore 5 oxen for 1 ox, and 4 sheep for 1 sheep. If a thief be found breaking up, and be smitten that he die, there shall be no blood be shed for him. If the sun be risen upon him, there shall be bloodshed for him, for he should make full restitution. If he have nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. So this is regarding thievery. That restitution must be paid, especially if you get caught. Restitution shall be paid. You'll find other places in the Bible that there's a certain percentage that you should pay according to restitution for what you steal. And it says here that you can be killed if you're caught in the process. And that's what them laws apply today. If someone breaks into your home, you have the right to self-defense. And you have the right to kill them in your home. These laws apply today here in America. Next, Exodus 21 and 33. Exodus 21 and 33. If a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or an ass fall therein, 34, the owner of the pit shall make it good and give money unto the owner of them, and the dead beast shall be his. So if you dig a pit, you gotta cover it. Or you're gonna be held example. Perfect example. The city. All day they dig all types of holes in the street. Now if they don't cover that hole and your car goes into it, who the first person you gonna sue? The city. The same applies if you dig a hole in your backyard and kids come to go play and they fall down into that hole. You should be sued because you didn't cover it. You didn't put warning signs. It's the same warning signs when a man mops, a janitor mops. He puts down a warning sign to let you know that the floor is wet. There should be warnings placed, and if they're not, someone should be held accountable. Next, we go on to Exodus 22. Exodus chapter 22, verse 6. If a fire break out and catch in thorns, so that the stacks of corn, or the standing corn, or the field be consumed therewithin, he that kindled the fire shall surely make restitution. So, you shall pay for property that's burned by the fire if you started the fire. Plain and simple. Some of these things are self-explanatory as you read them. We won't have to dwell on them for long. Next, Exodus 22, 7 through 9. If a man shall deliver unto his neighbor money or stuff to keep, and it be stolen out of the man's house, if the thief be found, let him pay double. If the thief be not found, then the master of the house shall be brought unto the judges, to see whether he have put in his hand unto his neighbor's goods. For all manner of trespass, whether it be for ox, for ass, for sheep, for raiment, or for any manner of lost thing, which another challenged to be his, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges, and whom the judges shall condemn, he shall pay double unto his neighbor. So, if somebody loans, so be careful what you take from a person, because if somebody loan you something and you happen to lose it or break it, then you have to pay double for what it's worth, double in its value. It's only what's right according to the commandments, and morally you must pay it back. The Bible tells you must pay it back in double. Let's go to Exodus 22:15. But the owner thereof, he shall not make it good, if it be an hired thing. Whoa, let's make sure we're at the right place. Right. It's actually 16. I apologize. It's 22:16. And if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. So if you lay or have sex with a woman, then she must be your wife. Plain and simple. But it goes on to 17. And if her father utterly refuses to give her unto him, he shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins. So if the girl you slept with father say, no, I don't want him to marry my child, then you had to pay a dowry to him. Just like if you was going to marry her, you still have to pay the dowry. Plain and simple. Let's move on to Exodus 22, which that was 17. That's the dowry, 22:17, that you must pay to the father. And let's move on to Exodus 22:18. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. What does that mean? You should not bother to let a witch live. But nowadays you can't go around killing witches, so just don't associate yourself with witches and their witchcraft. I have found myself in the past dealing with witchcraft and not even knowing it, because I thought they were traditional things to our people when they're not. They're pagan rituals and witchcraft. Let's move on to 22:19. Exodus 22:19. Whosoever lieth with the beast shall surely be put to death. No lying with animals, no having sex with animals, these ridiculous pornographies and stuff with these women and these men lying with animals is ridiculous, and they should be put to death. Plain and simple. According to the Bible, not by my word. Let's move on. Exodus 22 and 21. Exodus 22 and 21. Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppose him, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. You cannot oppress a stranger. You cannot bully somebody you do not know. Because at one time, we were bullies. We were bullied. And God pulled us out of that in the land of Egypt. And we must remember that. And in remembering that, we shall not oppress other people. Exodus 22, 22 through 24. Ye shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If thou afflict them in any wise, and they cry at all unto me, I will surely hear their cry. And my wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. So, you shouldn't afflict any widow or any fatherless or bastard child, because if you do and they cry to God, he will hear their cry, and you will be killed. God personally attends to these types of matters. So be careful or who you afflict or who you oppress. Really, you're not supposed to impress nobody. Remember, we were in Egypt and we were pulled out of oppression. So it is not in your place to oppress others. Let's move on to Exodus 22, 25. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as a usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. Okay, and what this means is, you shouldn't, if you loan money to the poor and needy, you shouldn't tack interest on it. Now, that doesn't make sense to tack the interest on it. All right, I'm going to refer to the Zondervan's Bible Dictionary, and it says on page 878, usury. Usury is Greek for, or Hebrew is neshek, is interest. God gave specific instructions to Israel with regard to interest on money loan. Any money that a Jew lent to his brother was to be without interest. Exodus 22, 25, Deuteronomy 23, 19. Money could, however, be lent to a stranger with interest. Deuteronomy 23, 20. So, but you can't lend to the poor and needy and tack on interest and expect them to pay it. That's against biblical rule or biblical commandments. We'll move on to Exodus 22, 28. Thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people. Now, when it says gods here, it's talking about God's name or the judges he has set before you, or the ruler of thy people. Now, I had a bad habit with this. I used to curse Obama so bad because of the things he's done to my insurance, all the promises that he made that he fell through. But that's not the conversation topic. But I was wrong. I repent, I admit my sins, and I will not do it again. You cannot, no matter how bad they're ruling, how bad things get, you cannot curse your ruler. Your ruler was set before you by the ordination of God. No matter how much you think them votes, he makes things happen for a reason. These things happen because it's God's will. So don't curse your ruler. Just know that these things are happening to set things up the way God wants them to go. took me a long, that kind of hurt me when I found that out, because I used to curse Obama a lot. Next, Exodus 23, verse 1. Thou shalt not raise false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Now, plain and simple, you should not raise a false report so that you can be an unrighteous witness for the wicked. Your cousin murdered somebody and you say he was at your house all night long. You're wrong, according to commandment law. And there's another commandment law we'll get to later that says you gotta tell on them. Plain and simple. If you know, you have to tell on them. Plain and simple. There's no exceptions. Let's go to Exodus 23, verse 2. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. This kind of falls, the second part falls on verse 1. The first part tells you, you shall not follow the multitude to do evil. So if the group of people is doing something wrong, it doesn't make it right. If the TV and the fad and the new thing is to do that, but the Bible commandment says it's wrong, then it's wrong. Plain and simple. It does not give you a right to be a part of that. Also, you shall not speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. So you should not speak in a way that it defers the righteous judgment of a person. Like in verse 1, you shall not make a false report. You don't go into the courtroom and say, oh, he was with me the whole time. He couldn't have done it. Well, knowing that he really did do it. That you change his judgment so that he doesn't get judged for what he did. That's not right. And you will be held accountable for it. We move on to Exodus 23, verse 3. Neither shalt thou countenance a poor man in his cause. So you can't play favoritism. That's another thing. Let's move on. Exodus 23, 4 and 5. If thou meet thine enemy's ox or his ass going astray, thou shalt surely bring it back to him again. And if thou see the ass of him that hateth thee lying under his burden, and wouldst forbear to help him, thou shalt surely help with him. So, you got to help your enemies. Anyone who needs help, if you see them that they need help, then you should just, if you even think they need help, ask and see, and if they do, help them, especially your enemies. You can't pass your enemy by and laugh at him. Look at you now, ha 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 ha. That's not cool, not at all, according to the commandments. You must stop and help him. Let's move on. Exodus 23, 6. Thou shalt not wrest the judgment of thy poor in his cause. So you shouldn't play favoritism in your testimony as a witness. So if you have to do with the judgment of a person, then you must not play favoritism towards that person. Exodus 23, verse 7. Keep thee far from a false matter, and the innocent and righteous slay thou not, for I will not justify the wicked. So keep yourself far from false matters or circumstantial evidence or circumstantial situations, not to judge the innocent, jumping to conclusions, because he will not justify the wicked. Let's move on to Exodus 23, 8. And thou shalt not take no gift, for the gift blindeth the wise and perverteth the words of the righteous. You cannot accept bribes. I don't care where you are, what type of work you can do, you cannot accept the bribe. A bribe can come in many different forms. We've all heard about police bribes and judge bribes, but if you're working somewhere and somebody offers to pay you money to take an item and give it to them, well, if you're not putting it in the register and you're putting it in your pocket, then technically that's a bribe, and it's also stealing. So that's two commandments you'll be breaking in one. If someone goes to pay you to bear false witness, there's another two commandments that you're breaking. You're accepting the bribe and you're bearing false witness for the bribe. So don't fall into that wickedness in accepting bribes. Let's move on to Exodus 23, 10 through 11. In 6 years thou shalt sow thy land and shalt gather in the fruits thereof. But the 7th year thou shalt let it rest and lie still, that the poor of thy people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field shall eat. In like manner thou shalt deal with the vineyard and with thy olive yard. So this is called the Sabbath year. Every 7 years you must let the earth rest. Back then farming was the major thing. And every 7 years, you were under the responsibility to not toil your land, to not sow your land, to leave it be. And let the beasts graze in the field, and let the poor come and pick the fruit so that they can eat. But you were to do nothing to your field. This is so that the earth may have a rest. This still applies to today. See, some laws don't apply to the day given the circumstances that we're in. And we'll get to some of those laws. But a lot of the laws we've already went through still apply to this day. Let's move on to Exodus 23, verse 12. 6 days thou shalt do thy work, and on the 7th day thou shalt rest, that thine ox and thy ass may rest, and the son of thy handmaid and the stranger may be refreshed. This is the Sabbath day. From Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, you should not be working or working for money. I mean, if your trash is overflowing in your house, you got to take your trash out. I mean, you know, that's plain and simple. But you can't be going to work from Friday night to Saturday night. I've realized through my own employment that jobs will make exceptions when you go to the initial, I can't think of the word right now. But when you go to get the job, you plain and simple just tell them, look, I can't work from Friday night to Saturday night. They'll ask why, and you tell them it's a biblical law. It's something I just can't do. And they'll respect that. And I've had no problems with that in employment. Next. Or they just won't hire you. Plain and simple. Next, we move on. Exodus 23 and 13. And in all things that I have said unto you, be circumspect, and make no mention of the names of other gods, neither let it be heard in thy mouth. They just don't exist, because God is the only God. The only one God, that all the rest of these quote-unquote entities do not exist. So they shouldn't be coming from your mouth at all. We move on to Exodus 23 and 14. 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Let me stop there. Exodus 23, 14. These are the 3 feasts that should be observed every year. And these feasts are spoken about directly after in Exodus 23, 15 and 16. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days as I commanded thee in the time appointed of the month of Abib. For in it thou camest out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. In the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field, in the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. 3 times in the year all thy males shall appear before the Lord God. There's a lot of commandments that don't apply to people. One, because they are commandments for men, they are commandments for women, they are commandments for priests, and they are commandments for the tabernacle. Because we have no tabernacle here, and the tabernacle that we should do these things in is only to exist in Jerusalem. They do not apply to us under the dispersion. While we are dispersed in the world, these things do not apply to us because we are not in the Holy Land. Let's move on. Exodus 23:18. This is another one. Because we can't make offerings right now. Because one, we're not in the Holy Land. And this is just a bread offering. But Exodus 23:18. Thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until evening. Okay, this is speaking about meat sacrifice. But it shall not be made with leavened bread. And we can't do that because we don't have no temple to do it in. So, and we're not in the Holy Land. So this is one of those things that right now we cannot do. Let's move on to Exodus 29:19. I'm sorry. The first of the fruits of thy land thou shalt bring into the house of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not seethe a kid in its mother milk. See, it says bring it into the house of the Lord thy God. The house of the Lord thy God is the tabernacle in Jerusalem. And we can't do that. And thou shalt not seethe the kid in its mother's milk. So you should not cook a goat in its mother's milk concerning the sacrifice to God. Now, when it's your own personal cooking, I'm kind of not sure about that. But I just don't. Sometimes we make exceptions. Nobody even thinks about cheese on a burger. That's its mother's milk that you're cooking on that burger. But we have people that say when you're cooking your own food on a regular basis, it does not count. It only accounts for when you're bringing an offering. That's why 19 starts with the first of the fruits of thy land thou shalt bring into the house of the Lord thy God. And then it has 2 dots. I think that's a colon. And so that means this applies to that. And it says, thou shalt not seethe the kid in its mother's milk. So when it comes to God's offerings, you cannot cook the goat and the mother's milk. Let's move on to Exodus 23:24. Thou shalt not bow down to other gods, nor serve them, nor do after their works, but thou shalt utterly overthrow them, and quite break down their images. And ye shall serve the Lord. Oh, I think I went a little bit too far. Thou shalt not bow down to other gods, nor serve them, nor do their works, but thou shalt utterly overthrow them and quite break down their images. So, break up them white images of Christ. Smash them statues and them crosses with Christ hanging on them. Smash them old African masks you got up in your house. Them little statuettes you got sitting around your house. Go ahead and smash them up, because the commandments tells you to do so. See, because you put them up on high, on mantelpieces, which are actually altars. It's masonry that was set up as altars that you put all them statues up on. So go ahead and smash them up according to the commandments, please. Let's move on to Exodus 23:31. And I will set thy bounds from the Red Sea, even unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and thou shalt drive them out before thee. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. So you cannot make a covenant with them or any other god. Now, this pertains to fraternities that require you to be initiated, clubs, groups, contracts, all types of different initiations and covenants, which is a contract with another person. You shall not make that covenant with any person or God. So you have to be careful with the things you get yourself into, because you could be violating commandment rules. Let's move on to Exodus 23:33. They shall not dwell in thy land, lest they make thee sin against me. For if thou serve other gods, it will surely be a snare unto thee. See, so strangers shouldn't dwell in your land. If you know a person is into some stuff that you ain't into, then you shouldn't be hanging with them. Because eventually, it's going to become a snare to you. Perfect example. To those who haven't had such a pleasant past. For example, I used to be a drug dealer. And it took for me to get away from drug dealers, or the friends, quote unquote, that were drug dealers. Because as long as I hang around them and I tried to pull myself into the word of God, I found myself trying to find ways to hustle or help them hustle to make money. But I wound up cutting them people off so that I could stay in the word and not let them be a snare to the covenant that I've set myself between me and God. You understand? Or God is set between me and him. Does that make sense? I hope so. Leave a message or a comment, and if you need to, on any of these things, and I will comment further. Let's move on to Exodus 25, verses 8 through 9. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell amongst them, according to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof. Even so shall ye make it. So this is regarding the tabernacle. This is another one of those commandments that doesn't really pertain to us at this moment, because we're not in Jerusalem. It's the Holy Land, and it's the only place where the tabernacle shall be rose or should be built. So because we're not there, we're in the dispersion, we're here in America, we can't do that right now. Now, some people practice some of these things. They practice, but you cannot just like officially, biblically go do these things right now, because unless you build in the temple in Jerusalem, I don't know what to tell you. Let's move on. Exodus 25:15.